Hi, welcome to yet another episode of Be Positive on etbrandequity.com. I'm your host of the show, Ambi Parameswaran, and today we have with us a young marketing and a CEO achiever, Salil Murthy, CEO MD of General Mills India and Southeast Asia, I should add. Salil, thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Hi, Ambi. Thank you for having me. And I must say, it's a privilege to be on the show with you.
Thank you. That's kind of you. So, Salil, this show is about being positive. Is about overcoming obstacles, overcoming rejection, and bouncing back. And that's why we've called this BE positive. Is also a play on the word brand equity positive. You had a fabulous career, and of course, it's still your career is still continuing, and I'm sure you'll achieve greater heights as we go along. You have been rated as one of the 40 most high achieving under 40 executives in India. I think, if my knowledge is right, you're probably one of the youngest CEOs of a Fortune 100 company in India, and you made it to the top through the marketing route, which makes all of us marketing folks very, very happy. And I'm sure we will learn a lot by discussing, by listening to your career story. So I'm looking forward to learning from this conversation. As you know, this show is about staying positive, staying engaged, and facing objections and challenges, which I'm sure you faced a lot during your great career. So before we jump into your career, what I want the viewers to kind of take us on a flashback, on your early childhood, family, schooling. And if I remember right, your father was an executive at ITC. So I remember you telling me that in one of our chats. So can you take us back to your childhood, where you were born, brought up? Was it all over India? Was it in Kolkata?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you're right. My dad was in ITC for most of his career. And so what happened was that we spent a lot of time living in different places of India, depending upon wherever he got transferred. So we spent a lot of time in Chennai or Madras as it was called then. So I'm kind of dating myself. I still think of it as Madras and not Chennai. We lived in Calcutta. We lived in a small town in Bihar called Munger, where ITC has a couple of plants. We moved back to Chennai, then we moved to Bombay. And so we were kind of moving around all the time. I think I studied in about 7 or 8 different schools by the time I was totally done. And it was really interesting because there was definitely the sense of dislocation, right? Because every few years you get up and you pick yourself up and you move to a different part of India. But one amazing upside, I would say, which I figured out probably in retrospect, was that we lived in so many different environments. I got to make new friends every few years in new places, in different places, and they all came from very different backgrounds and cultural contexts, right? So my friends in, Chennai were pretty different from the friends in my classmates in school in Bihar, for example. And so I think there were a lot of different, I think, viewpoints, a lot of diversity of experiences and voices, and I think that kind of helped. As I kind of grew up and went through my school and my college and my career, in terms of really beginning to value some of those different experiences and backgrounds to make decisions. So that was kind of one piece of it, that almost peripatetic lifestyle, if you will. But my parents had a huge influence on me as well. My dad is from IIT Kharagpur, and then obviously worked in a senior level in a bunch of different corporate jobs, including ITC. My mom's a Shakespeare scholar and teacher. And so, given their backgrounds, they were very, very focused on my brother and I excelling academically. They were very focused. It's not that we always excelled academically, but they were very focused on that. But they were also really focused on making sure we did a lot of other stuff. So we did a lot of sports. My brother and I both played tennis and squash and competitive swimming as we kind of grew up. So there were a bunch of different things that we kind of did. It wasn't all about studies all the time. It was what are you doing for the rest of the day when you're not studying, and are you doing something kind of useful and productive?
Okay, and did you finish your 11th and 12th in Mumbai, or was it in some other city?
Oh no, we went back to Chennai, and I finished my 11th and 12th in Chennai in a school called DAV.
DAV, okay. That's not my favorite school because I did my schooling in Chennai at Vidya Mandir High School. So
Yes, they're traditionally rivals across the town, right?
I know. So anyway, I pardon you because you did not know. So you should have studied in Vidya Mandir. Anyway, so from school, did you again follow your father and go to one of the IITs, or you ducked it out?
Yeah, that's a bit of a story actually. So what I really wanted to do in school was actually do medicine, and I wanted to become a doctor, right? And so
Lovely.
after the 12th, I took biology in my 11th, if I'm not mistaken, which then is the traditional marker or signal for somebody who's serious about medicine. All the guys who wanted to do IIT took engineering drawing, and that was kind of their marker as well. And then, so I did all the entrance exams. There was an exam called the PMPD, the pre-medicine, pre-dental, I think, at that point. Did all of that, and I was all set to become, future cardiologist or brain surgeon or kidney specialist or whatever it was I'd have become at that point. And then about a month before, and then my dad moved to Bombay, so we moved to Bombay with him. And about a month before I was supposed to start my medical course, my dad took me to medical college of a friend of his to just get a sense of kind of what the life is like. And so we drove down there and we spent a couple of days there. And at the end of 2 days, I was really clear on one thing, that I absolutely hated that life and I did not want to do medicine.
So Salil, you were kind of gung ho about medicine, and then your dad takes you to visit a hospital, and then you suddenly lose heart. So what happened?
Well, I think it was a couple of things. Uh, so let me step back a little bit, right? And uh, in retrospect, I think I was just fully caught up in the whole rat race, right? So if you think about you're growing up in the 80s and the 90s, you go to good school, you get decent grades, and then you go on and you either become an engineer or you become a doctor. And I was just being kind of carried along by that wave and doing whatever my friends and my classmates were doing. And I hadn't really stopped to figure out what it is that I wanted to do, right? And then I hadn't really stopped to figure out what it is that I love doing. And so I think that kind of hit home, and it was a confluence of different things when I actually went to this college. The first place I went to met my friend's dad, and the first place he actually took me to was the morgue, the hospital morgue, right? And then you walk through, and then there are these plastic sheet curtains which you need to kind of part through and enter. And so we put on a mask and so on and so forth and entered. And the first thing that kind of hit me like a slap in the face was that smell of formaldehyde. And we use formaldehyde to embalm the bodies, right? And there was this really, if you've ever smelled formaldehyde, you'll never forget the smell. I still can't. It hit me like a slap in the face. And so I looked around and there were a bunch of these cadavers. And so that was kind of one part of it. And then as I began to talk to some of the doctors and understood kind of what they were doing, one of the things I basically figured out was that they'll be studying, they do their MBBS and then they do the MD and the specialization and post super specialization and so on and so forth. And I basically did the maths and figured out that I'd be studying until I was 32 or 33, right? And I wasn't super thrilled with that. I wasn't super thrilled with the lifestyle. I realized more importantly, I didn't really have a passion for medicine, right? And that was where kind of that whole piece I was talking about, which is I never really stepped back to think about what I wanted to do. At that point, that moment hit me hard because I was sure about what I didn't want to do, but I had no idea about what I really wanted to do. So that was kind of what went down. Those were pretty pivotal moments in, I'd say, my life.
Then what did you do? So you gave up medicine and you switched track to do BSc biology or what?
Yeah. So like I said, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was sure what I didn't want to do. And so my parents were very supportive at that point. They could have gone full Indian dad and mom on me and said, you're throwing away a wonderful career, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. But they were very chilled out about it. They basically left it up to me and said, we get it. You don't want to do medicine. What do you want to do? And so, sometimes when there are no easy answers, the best thing to do is not force the issue, right? And the best thing to do is not to kind of force an answer to a problem or to, when you don't know the answer. So I did that. I basically kicked the can down the road. I said, look, let me go and do probably the path of least resistance course. And so I got admission. My grades were pretty good, so I got admission into a BSc in physics in Bombay University. And I said, let me do that, and let me also then use that time to figure out what it is that I really wanted. And so that was really, really interesting, because a number of really good things happened to me when I was doing my undergrad in Bombay. So I genuinely enjoyed physics. I liked the subjects. I honestly didn't find the course extraordinarily challenging. And part of it, I suspect, is not because I was a really smart guy. It was probably because they hadn't necessarily designed the syllabus in a way that would really kind of stretch you or make you think. And so what that meant was I had a whole bunch of free time and I was able to do a lot of other stuff. So I did a lot of quizzing. I'd always been a very active quizzer in school. In college, I hit the quiz circuit with vengeance. I did a lot of the debating stuff, the usual geeky stuff, if you will. I joined this company. I don't know if you remember, Ambi, called Rediff on the Net. It's now Rediff, but it used to be called Rediff on the Net. And it was run by...
Rediff.com.
It's now Rediff.com. It used to be Rediff on the Net. It was run by, still is, I think, by Ajit Balakrishnan.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm on the. By the way, I'm on their board. So
there you go. There you go. So this was way before you joined the board, I'm pretty sure, when it was before they rebranded themselves, right? But they were the first digital-only kind of news website. And they just started a few years ago. And I applied for an internship because I had time on my hands. And that was absolutely phenomenal. So I worked there for a few months, half a year or something like that, not a long time. But it was great because I actually got to go out and they were not a full-fledged news organization. So as a cub reporter / intern / trainee, I kind of make the chai in the morning for everybody, but I also go out and kind of research and do stories. And one of the stories I actually did was I interviewed Arthur C. Clarke, Dr. Arthur C. Clarke. And,
wow, really?
So it was fascinating. I did the first interview with Dr. Clarke in 20 years because he was notoriously public shy. He had basically retired to some corner of Sri Lanka and was basically hiding out there. It was fascinating because he had just written a book, 3001: A Space Odyssey, in his latest book. And he published the book.
Hold it, Salil. Yep. Just for the sake of the viewers, I need to do a little bit of a segue to say a little bit about Arthur C. Clarke. Arthur C. Clarke, sure. For the viewers who are not aware, is a legend science fiction author. In fact, he visualized a lot of things we take for granted today. For example, the idea of geostationary satellites were visualized by him. He wrote a series of science fiction books, which all of us would have read. Maybe some of the younger viewers may not have read. The Foundation series, which are 1, 2, 3, 4. And of course, the 2001 Space Odyssey, which went on to become a classic movie directed by, I think, Stanley Kubrick, right?
Stanley Kubrick, that's right. Foundation was Asimov, but they were...
Sorry, Asimov. And of course,
you're right, it's
2001 Space Odyssey. And of course, Rama, right? Rama, something.
That was again, yeah. So Rendezvous with Rama, and that was again.
Yeah, Rendezvous with Rama, yeah.
Clarke and Asimov were kind of contemporaries, and they wrote those books. But I'm so glad you brought that up.
How the hell did you get to meet Arthur C. Clarke? Yeah, so, that's amazing.
It's a crazy story. It's a crazy story, right? What happened, Ambi, was that there was a scientist at the Nehru Planetarium who basically rebutted some of the science in Arthur C. Clarke's latest novel. Now, Arthur C. Clarke basically writes what's known as hard science fiction. Hard science fiction is, as opposed to the fantasy stuff which happens where people kind of do random time travel and so on and so forth. It's basically grounded in scientific reality as we know it. So people and mechanisms do not violate the laws of space and time as per our current understanding, and that understanding continues to go. So that's what's going to happen. So what that means is that there was a lot of technical research that Dr. Clarke had basically done, but here was a scientist disproving this claim. And the claim specifically was, there were these gigantic there were these geostationary satellites, but they were supported. They were not hanging in space. They were supported by these 200-meter or something kind of columns made of tensor steel and so on and so forth. And so the scientist basically said this is physically impossible. And so I got in touch with the scientist, and I didn't get, my editor got in touch with the scientist, and he threw a whole bunch of physics and equations at him. And so I think at that point I was quietly drinking a cup of coffee in the corner of the newsroom, and the editor basically called me and said, "Hey, you're the physics guy, right?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I'm like first year BSc physics, but well, okay, I guess I am the physics guy." And so he said, right, you're now doing the story." I'm like, "Say what? Hang on, you want me to get in the middle of these two guys?" So I said, "Sure, no problem." And so I got the scientist point of view. Now, any good journalist would say that you need to get both sides of the story, right, in order to kind of even it out. And so the next step was to get in touch with Dr. Clarke. The issue was he had not given a story for 20 years. And so then I began to kind of reach out to a whole bunch of different people and beg them for some contacts. And so finally, I got through to somebody who got through to somebody, and so on and so forth. This whole 6 degrees of separation effect kicked in. And 3 days later, I was actually on the phone with Dr. Clarke in Sri Lanka. And it was a really cool moment because we put it on speakerphone, and my entire newsroom, including my editor, were clustered behind me because he's a living legend, right? He's just such a celebrity. And so it was amazing because I took him through this whole thing, and he basically poo-pooed it and said that everything the scientist said is absolute rubbish. And we started talking about the physics, and thankfully he did it in a way that I could actually understand. And then he proceeded to send me a few faxes, and I think I still have the faxes personally signed by him, where he sent me the equations which proved that the physics worked and the towers would still kind of hold up. And so then I did a story. It's still somewhere on the internet. I mean, I'm sure it's available somewhere. I haven't looked for it recently, but we did a whole story basically talking about the physics and how that whole piece worked. So yeah, that was a fun moment of.
That's really amazing. So you did BSc physics, and then you worked for a couple of years before heading to IIM, or?
Oh no, I was actually doing it on the side. So I was. I did a couple of things on the side. I was in those 3 years. I probably did 3 important things. I worked with Rediff. Then at some point, I started my own online magazine where I really wanted to kind of handle some of the serious stuff, right? So we did long form issues like whether making sure that how do we legalize things like prostitution so that sex workers adequately brought into a society and so on and so forth. So serious, heavy social kind of stuff. And then I guess the third and the most important thing that I did while I was there was I met my future wife. So kind of I'd say these are the 3 important things that I kind of did. And oh yes, I also got a degree at the end.
And then you finished your BSc and then headed straight to IIM, or did you work?
Right. No. So I finished my BSc and then I got through to IMC, and so from there I kind of.
So so you're a rarity, right? You're a non-IIT, non-engineer to get into IIM Joka. So how was Joka? How did Joka treat you?
So Joka is the name, the popular name of the IMC campus, right? Because it's located in the area of Joka outside Calcutta. But that was an experience which I think all of us who went through will never forget, right? And for a couple of reasons. First, everybody is smarter than you as you kind of go there. And everybody is an overachiever. So you come in thinking that you're a cat's whiskers, and you very quickly get disabused of that notion. And the sooner you make your peace with that fact, the better it is for all of you. I got a lot out of my 2 years in Calcutta, but frankly, I think I left a lot on the table as well. And I missed out on a lot of the learning I might have gotten had I been smarter, had I been more mature. Like you say, Ambi, I was very young when I got into Joka. I didn't have any work experience. And I think I was 19 or 20 when I got into campus. And so I really didn't know what to expect. And in retrospect, having a little bit of experience would have helped me kind of understand it better. So I'd say I learned a lot, but I left a lot on the table. What I did get was a lot of frameworks in economics and organization theory and marketing and strategy and how to apply them to kind of real life business cases. So I got a phenomenal education that way. I got a ton of humility. I learned a lot of humility, right? Because you're working with really smart people all the time. I was very active in the kind of social life of the campus. I did a lot of quizzing, a lot of debating. I was a cultural secretary there, so active in that. Um, I also kind of, in retrospect, and this is always in retrospect, I feel like I kind of missed out on a lot as well, right? And for the very simple reason that a student in a typical B school is really focused against optimizing for one thing and one thing only, which are placements, right? And that's the honest fact. What that means, therefore, is that you tend to focus on very specific courses. You tend to focus on getting grades. You tend to focus on CVs and on specific companies you want to join. But what you actually miss out on is the ability to broaden your horizons in an absolutely fantastic way, right? And so, if you think about, some of the courses which I really enjoyed and which I probably remember the content of much more 20 years later, right? Much more than the microeconomics theory and the everything else, the strategy courses that I took. The things like, strangely enough, Indian economic and political history, management of self, some of the organizational behavior theories. Frankly, I think they added more value to me as a manager and a leader than most of the other courses. And not to decry the value of any of the other courses, they were absolutely fantastic. It's for me at this time and place. And so some of these courses are absolutely fantastic. I can talk a little bit about them, but I probably didn't pay enough attention to that genre of courses as much as I should have.
I think you hit a nail on the head, and I keep lamenting this, that compared to my time, which was 1977, 79, today this placement obsession starts very early, right? Probably the day you enter the campus, or even a day before you enter the campus, and therefore the students are too very focused on not enjoying the courses and taking a random walk, literally. In taking courses like behavioral science, human values, management and human values, which are all great courses to take, but may not have any placement value, any CV value. That's a bit of a shame, especially in a place like I am, Calcutta. We have so many wonderful professors in economics, in human resources, in strategy, and so any professors you remember, anyone who left a long impression on you?
Yeah, there were a number of them. I mean, the one that probably stands out the most is Professor Leena Chatterjee. And,
I was about to ask whether Leena Chat was one of your favorite professor. Yeah.
She really was, and Lynn Chat, as we all called her, and it's surprising after 20 years, we still call her Lynn Chat, but she was absolutely phenomenal, right? And she taught, a lot of the OB courses, all behavior courses. She taught this absolutely fantastic course called Management of Self. And it was strange because a lot of the people who didn't take the course saw it as a soft course, right? Quote unquote. It is probably the course that added the most value to me, and a very simple reason. We talk a lot about emotional intelligence in today's world and leadership theory and so on and so forth. The first component of emotional intelligence, as articulated by Daniel Goleman, is self-awareness. And without self-awareness, nothing else is going to follow. You basically don't have an EQ if you're not fundamentally self-aware. And this course really taught you to kind of get in touch with who you are, get a lot more comfortable with who you are. If you think about, when I think about the leaders I have seen who've been successful, I think about myself personally in the areas where I have actually been self-aware. I've probably, in those situations, I've probably been more effective, probably been more successful. In the areas where I've had a blind spot or my Johari window was down, those are the areas where I've stood up, right? And so these are the things you kind of learn, unfortunately, 10, 15, 20 years later when it's too late. But that is one course which Lincha took, and which I will always kind of treasure for me.
No, I think just to get the viewers going, this whole concept of positive psychology is something which Daniel Goleman, kind of pioneered, and of course Lynn Chatz has been probably using his concepts in her class, and viewers who are interested can actually go and look at, there is what is called a 24 VIA test, which you can go and do and check out what are your, strengths. So great. So from I am Cal. Did you do a summer internship with PNG and then get placed with PNG, or how did the
No, I didn't.
PNG happen?
Yeah, no, so I didn't. I did my summer internship with another company, ANC Greenlays, the Greenlays Bank. It was based out of Chennai at the time. It was absolutely fantastic, except a month into my summer internship, it was basically announced that they were shutting down their operations. Stanchart was taking over the entire business. I think it was Stanchart, as I recall. And so that really wasn't an option for me anymore, which in retrospect was probably good. I don't think I'd have been a particularly good banker anyway. So I think, things tend to kind of work out in a nice way. I would not have been a successful banker, I can tell you that. But then the final placement, I got offers from Unilever and Procter. And again, look, I'm 21. What do I know about the world? What do I know about big companies? And who am I to make a judgment on big companies or like Procter and Unilever? The reality was we were all kind of
How old were you? You're 21, 22?
Yeah, I was 19 when I joined. So I passed out when I was 21. If I'm not, yeah, 21. That's right. 21, 22, something like that. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. 22-year-old young MBA joining PNG. Great. So
It's scary, right? The kind of kids that were unleashed upon the world. And I had to make a decision on it's
very scary. Very scary. I
join
imagine a
PNG.
22-year-old area sales manager supervising 45-year-old, territory in charge.
Oh, that's a whole big story. But before I even got to the TSO, I had to make a call between here are two big MNCs, and I need to make a judgment call between the two. And there's no way I had enough information to make that decision. So I based it on a very simple heuristic, which is who are the people I liked better in the interview, who are like the nicer people, who smiled more. And obviously, the stuff that you hear from your people who have been senior to you in B school, and stories about work and culture and so on and so forth. But I based it on a very simple principle that I kind of liked the people I interviewed with in one company more than the other. Not that I didn't like them all, but there was a little bit of an edge. And so I said, okay, what the hell, I want to join PNG. And so I joined Procter.
What about ITC? You didn't want to join ITC?
Well, I think PNG and Unilever came first to campus, and then the rule is that once you get an offer, you basically need to get out of the.
So you could not apply to ITC. Otherwise,
I couldn't. Okay. I couldn't apply to ITC. Yeah, it was, and they're both wonderful companies. They're all wonderful companies there, but I just happened to get lucky. And so when I kind of went and they made me the offer, they basically said, look, do you want to move to marketing, and we have a role in Singapore? And then I said, no, I really don't want to go to marketing, and don't want to do Singapore. And so at that point, I think they basically stopped and said, we may have made a mistake in making him an offer, because who turns down a marketing role in PNG in Singapore? I mean, how stupid is this guy, and where are our processes broken down? And so they said, fine, so what do you want to do? And I said, look, and again, I mean, this goes back to your whole point of 21, 22 years old are naive and foolish, but sometimes they don't know what they want or don't want, and it's a good thing. Because I said, look, I don't want to go to Singapore and do marketing without understanding how the business operates, and I don't have any work experience. I don't have any business experience. So I want to join sales and understand how dhanda happens. And so that's where I want to go. So I got a little bit of stick from my batchmates who said, how can you turn down a marketing job to go to a sales job? And so so there's an old Chinese proverb which says, be careful about what you ask for, you might just get it.
Yeah.
And in my case, it was very true, because they sent me to Trichy. And Trichy is
not bad. Trichy is not bad. They could have sent you.
No, I loved it.
They could have sent you to Monguer, or they could have sent you to Begusarai.
Absolutely. They did send me to Trichy though, which is fantastic. My Tamil continues to be pretty bad, although it got better there in a hurry. But that was fantastic, and I think completely blindly. I am giving myself no credit here, but purely by accident, I made a really good decision about actually going and learning about the business from the ground up. Doing 3 years of a hardcore sales stint, and it was exactly what he said. I go in as a 21, 22-year-old, and I am working with a bunch of people who are older than I am. They are more experienced than I am in terms of the business. They're almost certainly smarter than I am. They really understand the nuts and bolts. And I am supposed to lead them. And so what happens then is, and what happens, and I've seen this play out over the years, the wheat separates from the chaff pretty quickly, because either you figure out a way to earn the respect quickly, or you're basically need to go and find something else to do. And there've been a lot of flameouts. And so it's it was one, you grow up really quickly in an environment like that. You studied all these fancy, and I'll give you a few examples. You study all these fancy theories and concepts, and then the first time you go and sit in front of a wholesaler in Mayavaram, and you're sitting across him, and there is no fan, and he has maybe, I'm making this up, maybe 800 SKUs in his tiny 10 by 15 shop. And if you ask him for any single SKU, you can ask him that Rin bar 50 grams, he will be able to tell you the net rate, the landing price, what exact margin he makes, how much he will make by selling it in 3 different cities, down to 2 decimal places, completely in his head. Right? And I'm thinking I'm this hotshot MBA who knows business, and he showed me exactly how a cash run business is done. And that was an education. I remember this one wholesaler, I sat at his store for 2 days, drinking endless cups of tea and learning more about the business than I think I learned, in many of the courses. At some point, I decided to optimize the coverage structure for my distributor. And what that means is you have a van that's going from town to town, picking up orders and supplying orders. And my job was to cost optimize for the kilometers that the vans run, because every kilometer run is a certain fuel cost, and also, therefore, the overall manpower. And so I said, okay, fine, this is a problem. I applied a whole bunch of operational theory, traveling salesman algorithm,
operations research, linear programming from
all the
Calcutta,
linear programming, traveling, absolutely. And Ashchat, who's Leena Chatterjee's, Professor Leena Chatterjee's husband, actually taught us operations research. And I applied the traveling salesman problem. And I came up with this really good model, and I took it to my distributor and said, I have solved it for you. I'm going to save you so much money. So much money. You are going to be grateful to me for life. And he took a look at it in 10 minutes, pointed out 30 problems with it. Right. And the reality was that he said, yeah, you can do this, but this bridge is broken. It won't work. Yeah. You can do this, but the problem is, where is this guy going to sleep in the night? He will have to go to this town, and in this town, this is the cost of the whatever lodge is only so much. And so once he really threw real world sand into the finely constructed machine I had made, the machine came crumbling down, right? And so you quickly realize how to kind of balance real world from theory. And so, but that was kind of just an absolutely fantastic thing. I did I did a year at Trichy.
And then what?
Sorry, go ahead.
Did you continue in the field after Trichy?
Yeah. So I was in Trichy and then Madurai. So 1 year in Trichy, Madurai was the bigger headquarters, and then they moved me to Bombay. I must have done something right or something wrong. I still haven't been able to figure out which, but they moved me to Bombay, which is where P&G headquarters are. I think to keep a closer eye on me, make sure I didn't get into more trouble. And then I did that for about a year, a little less than a year. And then I went back to the company. And I said, look, I've learned a lot about sales. It's been a phenomenal experience, but I want a much broader view of the enterprise, of the business, right? And so I'm seeing one part of it, which is the execution and the pointy end of the stick. I want to get a much broader sense of how the business and the organization runs. And in any good FMCG company, marketing is very correct. So I said, hey, how about that role in marketing that you offered? And so the company was obliged me, was kind enough for the second time to kind of humor me and move me to marketing and move me to Singapore at the same time. So that's kind of how I moved to marketing in Singapore.
And in Singapore, what were the brands which were given to you to handle? Or did you have any interesting stories from your Singapore stint? Anything which you launched, which failed? Anything which you did, which succeeded?
Yeah, no, so lots of those. So I was handling some of the Vicks brands in India and Indonesia, particularly Vicks Throw Drops. And that was great. And there were a couple of things that kind of worked.
So I should stop.
We launched Vicks Throw Drops.
I should stop you here because I, as a young product manager, I worked on Strepsils, and we used to compete with Vicks and Halls those days, and we did that very famous MGM Lion commercial those days.
That's right. That's right.
Gale mein kharash, structures wala ad. So I've seen how Vicks cough drops is at one time it was available in that cardboard box, right? And then they transformed the brand into single
Into the pillow
unit,
packs.
and into pillow packs and all that. So I think
That's
the Kich
correct.
Kich, even the Kich Kich campaign came from somewhere in Indonesia, Malaysia. I forget from where. It is not an Indian. They call the
I
Indian
think it
mug.
was Thailand. I think
Yeah.
it came from Thailand, and then it was brought in here and was tremendously successful. There was the whole Jayant Kriplani piece of advertising, which really built the ad Gale mein khich khich Vicks ki goli lo khich khich dur karo. And so that did fantastically well. So my job was to rebrand the brand, and that is when you have an iconic brand. Every kid who grew up in the 90s will sing that jingle. Jingle. When you have an iconic brand, rebranding it is a huge challenge. So my job was to completely change the brand architecture and the design. My job was to kind of introduce a whole bunch of new pillow packs and so on and so forth. So that was a job that was given to me. I was introduced as this hot shot from sales who's just come, who's going to turn the brand around. And you asked me about a failure moment, Ambi. 6 months later, they almost fired me.
Wow.
And it was a really interesting experience for me because here's what happened. I moved from a sales job into a marketing job, from sales job in India to a marketing job in Singapore. So on the surface of it, same company, everything seems to be the same. The cultural context was very different. In India, in a sales job, as an ASM, you are the king of the jungle. You are the lion. When you ask people to jump, their question is how high, right? And then you basically set the agenda for how it goes. When I moved to Singapore, I brought in a lot of baggage in terms of my management style. And what you quickly learn sitting in a regional headquarters in a multicultural environment is you need to be a lot more collaborative. You need to take a lot more people with you. You need to play much better with others than something that I was used to. And so for the first 6 months, I continued to operate the way I did. And as a result of it, almost everybody in my team went to my manager and said, we can't work with Salil anymore. He's just too difficult. It's his way or the highway all the time. And what I had not figured out was the cultural context had changed. And therefore, the way in which I needed to operate needed to change as well. And it wasn't like I was doing it deliberately to be a mean guy or a nasty guy. It was that I had been doing it so well so far and I had been successful. And so I hadn't realized I needed to change. But one of the great things about Procter is there's an amazing coaching and mentorship culture. And I had a bunch of amazing managers at the time who basically pulled me aside and said, here's some feedback for you. Right? And they gave me some tough feedback. They gave me some really tough. It was tough for me because I had not realized it. And they said, look, we're committed to kind of helping you work through this. We think you're fundamentally a good guy, but you need to be willing to make the effort. I said, this is surprising to me, but I'll do whatever it takes. And that was great because I think that I'll do whatever it takes to get better was basically a signal that I was open to feedback. And I think my managers recognized that. And so we spent a lot of time. I talked to a lot of people, got a lot of feedback. I was very deliberate about how I kind of changed my style. Long story short, they didn't fire me. So I suspect I must have changed something in some manner that had been positive. I kept my job.
Yeah, Salil, I think you're exaggerating. I don't think it would ever come to firing. I don't think P&G would have fired you at all. But I think there's a fantastic lesson in that little story you told, that you're a young pup who goes to Trichy. Suddenly you start growing up and you become, the big lion, and then you move from Trichy to Madurai to Bombay. Now you're a fully grown lion with a lovely mane around your face, and then you move from there to Singapore. So 2-3 things happen, and I've seen this happen, right? Someone who's been a RSM moves from a region to the head office, even in the same country, finds it very difficult, and the first thing is, the agency doesn't listen to him. The creative guys throw a tantrum and he gets very upset, say, we'll sack them. Doesn't work that way, right? I mean, you got to learn how to manage all your associates much better. In your case, you're in the same company, but you move to a completely different cultural setting. And in Singapore, there is a lot of multinational crowd, and there's a lot of politeness, there's about saving face, and this power distance stuff, which we know in India is huge. Like you address people as sir and all that, which probably doesn't exist in Singapore. So I quite empathize with you, and I think you were lucky that you had some very good mentors who could kind of handhold you through those challenging parts. Any specific one or two people you want to mention?
Oh, there are so many that it's hard to mention, but there are a couple who, really stand out, and I learned different things from all of them. Menad Dhar was one of my managers. He's now MD for Kimberly Clarke in India. Absolutely fantastic leader and boss. Super sharp thinker, really decisive. And I learned a lot from him in terms of kind of how to think through a business problem, how to keep unflappable during a crisis. Jim Lafferty. Jim was the CEO of the Philippines when I was brand manager running Safeguard in the Philippines. Safeguard is like Lifebuoy. It's a brand of soap, antibacterial soap. The only different thing was it's a soap with 60% market share. No soap ever has anything more than double-digit market share. And so absolutely brilliant brand. Jim was an absolute icon, straight from the heart, very, very clear, very, very high on values and integrity and a man of principle. And I learned a lot and zero tolerance for bullshit, which is brilliant. So I learned a lot from him there. Shantanu Khosla, who was heading India for many, many years. I think one of corporate India's greatest leaders. I mean, absolutely brilliant, absolutely unassuming. One of the finest gentlemen I met. So it's really, really great. So I think in many ways, Proctor was an amazing school. You learn a lot about business, you learn a lot about thinking, but you also get to work with some absolutely brilliant leaders, right? And then purely by the process of osmosis, you learn a lot from each one of them. And I'd say these and then many others have kind of helped me become a better, I'd say, manager leader.
Great. So PNG was what, 14 years or so, and then you made the move to General Mills. How did that happen? Was it a desire to come back to India? I'm sure PNG would have sent you to Minneapolis or
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati to the head office. I think Shantanu also did a stint. I think in Cincinnati.
No, I think he went to London, not Cincinnati. But yeah.
Okay. So Shantanu's brother is also from IMCAL, and Shantanu's brother was with my batch.
Shantanu's IMC as well. So yes.
Yeah, and so I know Shantanu, and interesting anecdote. Calcutta has an alumni in their selection panel in India. Everywhere they do, and I was on Shantanu's selection panel, and I still remember. How did General Mills happen? Was it Mainak who did the sell job?
Yeah, so I think General Mills was interesting. It wasn't a planned move necessarily, right? But I think a couple of things happened. About three things happened at the same time, which caused me to move to Procter. I wasn't necessarily looking out, but I think the first one that really happened was it was a very interesting challenge for me. I'd always worked on big brands in big countries, and this was an opportunity to kind of take a small business and see how much I could grow. So I think that was kind of one piece of it. I think the second piece of it was the level of operational freedom that I was promised I'd get, which I absolutely did and have gotten over the years. In General Mills, the freedom to run my own shop, and obviously in a large multinational matrix kind of hierarchy, there are many pulls and pushes and levers. And so just a level of operational freedom was great. And then I'd say the third thing to a certain extent was it felt like, to some extent, I had gotten to a comfort zone. And I was kind of, very comfortable where I was. And for me, at that point in my career, whatever, 13, 14 years, it felt like a little dangerous place to be, right? You don't want to ever get into a comfort zone, especially not so early in your career. This was an opportunity to go and get some hands-on operational experience. So not necessarily sitting doing giving brand management strategy roles in headquarters, but actually going and getting your hands dirty. So 3 or 4 of these things kind of came together. And then we made the shift. My family and I moved back to India in about 2014. And it's really interesting because on the surface of it, they're both very similar companies. They're both Fortune 100, 200, whatever companies. They are both US-based, both Midwestern, one's in Cincinnati, one's in Minneapolis. So very similar values from a headquarters standpoint. The difference is, I think, Procter is much more globally homogeneous. General Mills hasn't necessarily globalized as much, and therefore the different units run with a lot more autonomy, and there are a lot more kind of degrees of freedom, and the cultural context is also a little different from country to country, from headquarters versus regions, etc., etc. So it was really, really interesting for me because I parachuted into a place, and my mandate was very simple. Your job is really simple. You need to turn around the business, and oh, by the way, let's change the culture as well. And so that was kind of the mandate given to me. And so that was really interesting. And we've spent absolutely the last, let's say, 6 odd years. Still very much work in progress, but we've been able to kind of build the business, build a fantastic team, and hopefully kind of get a really strong culture in place as well.
So you moved in as director of marketing, and then you took over as CEO, or did you come in straight as CEO?
Oh, no. They wouldn't have trusted me to come in straight as CEO. I moved in as the head of marketing, which is fantastic because, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about, running the business here. We launched a whole bunch of new things, including entry into snacking. We did a lot of that work. That did extraordinarily well. We grew top line. We were also able to kind of build a really strong organization. So identify critical roles, get the right people into the roles, get the right capabilities and the training that we really needed. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I got promoted as general manager for India. And that was great because then I had, I was basically running a full-fledged kind of an operation. My first GM assignment, those are probably the most fun assignments. One of my mentors once told me, a brand manager and then a general manager. Everything else is just basically, waiting to become brand manager, waiting to become general manager, because these are the two roles where you really have the operational freedom, right? Because otherwise there's always somebody telling you what to do. As an assistant brand manager, you got a brand manager giving you crap all day. As a marketing director, you think you have the final say, but a general manager will generally tell you kind of what to do. But as a brand manager, general manager, you are the guy with the real power. And so, just the best job of your life, running your own shop. And with the more importantly, I think the full freedom to kind of make it big or screw it up, and that's all on you. The responsibility is all on you. So that's kind of what it's been like. I did that for a couple of years, and then I got promoted to my current role, where I'm running India and Southeast Asia, which is Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia regions.
Okay, so you have a fairly large regional responsibility, and so it's great. And of course, I think pandemic would have increased the consumption of packaged food product. That's what one is hearing. And of course, you launched a whole range of interesting innovations. Like I remember, I think the cooker cake, I think is a great idea. It's a fabulous idea. And of course, your Chakki Fresh Atta, I think, has been doing very well.
One of the things we noticed was more people are cooking much more at home because restaurants are closed and so on and so forth. They're making breakfast at home, but they're bored of the usual breakfast. They have more time at home, but whether it's a dosa or an idli or a paratha or whatever it is, or you tend to kind of get bored. We saw a pancakes consumption kind of shot through the roof because pancakes have never been a traditional Indian food or breakfast, but people were eating it a lot more. And so my team kind of jumped at that opportunity. We've launched a whole range of new pancakes in India. Those are doing phenomenally well. And again, going back to that whole difference between, working for a more agile company, we were able to do this from idea to launch in something like 2.5 months. And so,
hold.
Including
2.5 months, you launched a product, FMCG.
We launched it. That's right.
From a multinational.
Right?
I need to pinch myself.
It doesn't happen often, right? It's normally 2.5 years. The scale is different in many cases. But look, and to be honest, it's not just General Mills. You've seen companies kind of turn on a dime and repurpose factories from making liquid soap to hand sanitizer and so on and so forth. So what I think it tells us is it's possible to be agile. A lot of it is driven by mindset. A lot of it is driven by the vision that leaders set for their teams. But it's possible to do that. And I think if you're close enough to consumers and you really know what their needs are and you're able to respond quickly and take calculated risks, I think it's possible to do that. So that's been one of our fastest selling products. I mean, we've been surprised at just the reception that our pancakes, Betty Crocker and Pillsbury pancakes.
Superb. So good. So now I think we are near the end of our show, and I don't want to hold you back. I've gone way past the time you had promised me. So just to end the show, I would like you to, as you know, we are all about staying positive and doing positive, facing challenges and getting over it. So, in your own view, what does it take to be a successful marketing person in India?
Well, first I'd say and talk about how to be a successful marketing person, anywhere. There's this wonderful saying that I remember by Scott Fitzgerald, who said, the ability to hold two opposing thoughts in your head and still function effectively at the same time is really the mark of a first-rate intelligence. And I would say it's the mark of a first-rate marketer. So for me, it's all about resolving contradictions, right? And so there are probably two or three contradictions I will talk about. The first one is data is critical, but make sure you trust your gut. There's so much of data that's floating around these days, but at the end of the day, if all you go with by is data, we don't need marketers. Computers can do our job. AI and machine learning can kind of take care of that aspect. So figure how do you kind of trust your gut? And there are a number of examples where that has served me personally and a lot of my friends well. So that's kind of one piece. The second piece I'd really say is P&G always taught us the consumer is boss. That's very true. We start with the consumer. The reality is, so is your boss. Your boss is also your boss, right? And so what I mean by that is you need to figure out a win-win for what works for the consumer and what works for the company as well, in a way that is economically right or is building kind of moving in the right kind of direction. So a lot of people say, yes, this is what the consumer wants, but it has a 10% margin or whatever, 10 gross margin. It's never going to succeed. It's always going to get killed. Or equally, I have a great product which has a 50 gross margin, but there's no consumer insight and there's no clearly articulated need. That product is going to kind of fail as well. So if you're a good marketer, finds a way to kind of balance between what is the right thing to do from a consumer and what's the right thing to do from a company. And then I'd say the third really interesting contradiction is, as a brand manager, as a marketer, you spend all your time at work at least thinking about your brand and kind of how to grow your brand. The reality is the consumer really doesn't care too much about your brand or you. They care about themselves, and your brand is ultimately a tool to help them satisfy, right? And so accepting that both of these are truths is very, very important. And then you really need to think about what's relevant for my consumer and my brand at that particular point in time. And a recent example, Ambi, is all after we got all these medals at the Olympics, a number of brands jumped on the bandwagon, trying to do what's known as moment marketing. And the reality is, a lot of them got some positive press, negative press, but I don't think any of them stopped to think about, why should my brand have to do marketing at this point just because the Olympics is a hot topic or is trending on Twitter, right? Does it really make sense? And so is it the right thing to do from a brand? Is it what my consumer really cares about or wants to hear? They're doing it because they just want to kind of have a loudspeaker. So getting that balance, I think, is critical to building a brand. So I'd say these are the three things: data versus gut, consumer versus kind of company, and balancing them, and then really understanding what the consumer wants and what your brand needs to say and finding the balance. So I'd say managing contradictions is, I think, the biggest role of brand management.
That's superb. I think the problem with this entire moment marketing and digital marketing is that you get carried away of doing something. So there is Valentine's Day coming, so I need to post something, and there is Mother's Day coming, I need to post something. Oh, we have done well in Olympics, we need to post something. There is something happening in cricket. Everyone can't be Amul, right? Everyone can't be Amul. So it's futile to try and do what they've been doing for the last 40 years. So I think last three quick questions. Since you're in a food company, what is your favorite food?
My favorite food is what's known as a Benne Masala Dosa from Bangalore.
Okay.
So Benne Masala Dosa is a butter masala dosa. You get them actually the best ones are the place called Davangere, which is in a small town in Karnataka, which are absolutely wonderful. But I'm originally from Bangalore. It really feels like food to me. Those dosas are probably the best in the world. So yeah, that's my favorite.
Not Bisi Bele, Juliana, no?
Bisi Bele, Juliana, close second, I suppose.
Okay, so tell us about a book which you read or an OTT series you saw, which you want to tell us, you remember.
There's a book called Poor Charlie's Almanac, which is a collection of writings and speeches by Charlie Munger, who's
I have it here. I have it lying here. It's a huge book here. Yes, I have it. I have it just here. Yeah. Okay.
It's right behind me on my bookshelf as well. It's
the blue cover.
Absolutely brilliant.
So the blue cover. Yeah,
the blue cover, exactly.
Yes. Yeah. I have it here.
And his whole concept of mental models, the building of a lattice, what he calls a lattice of mental models, which helps you kind of think through, has been incredibly powerful. I find that really wonderful. So that's kind of one book I go back to a lot. Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, wonderful book. I don't know if you read it, but the ups and downs of his creating that company, absolutely read like a thriller to me. Um, High Output Management, Andy Grove. Again, it's a seminal management textbook on how to be a good manager. So again, those are great. I'm reading a couple right now. I play golf, and so one of the books that I'm really enjoying is a book called A Course Called Ireland by this crazy American guy who decided to play every single course in Ireland. There are lots of golf courses in Ireland, but walk around the entire island while playing it. So that's a fantastic read. I'm reading a book called The Three Body Problem, which is a science fiction book. Again, really fun. I really like it. Yeah, and then a couple of this book by Raghuram Rajan called The Three Pillars, which is again really interesting. So a bunch of different things.
Great. Yeah. So I think thank you, Salil, for your time, and I think it was a great story, starting with a call to Sri Lanka, talking to Arthur C. Clarke, and then entering IIM Calcutta at a ripe old age of 19, becoming an area sales manager in Trichy at an age of 21, overseeing people who are probably older than your father, right? And then to Singapore, and then not understanding the cultural nuances, and then of course now in India with General Mills, and launching new products. And I can't believe it that you launched a totally new product in 2.5 months. So amazing. So thank you, Salil, for joining us. And I think this has been a great episode. And so I will now let you go, and let me just thank the viewers for watching us on this Be Positive on brandequity.com. So thank you very much for joining us. And Salil, thank you very much once again for giving us your time and your very, very valuable insights into how a young marketing professional can navigate his career so brilliantly. So thank you very much, Salil.
Thank you for having me, Ambi. It was an absolute pleasure.